So I have come to a decision and a realization regarding the Star Wars reboot that you've heard a lot from me lately on. I have enrolled, as of today, to begin in May, at Full Sail University. That's where I'm going to use my GI Bill, pursuing a bachelor's in game design, and it is 32 months long, give or take, based on the number of credits transfer over from all the stuff I earned in the Navy. Pardon me. And some of the college that I went through prior to the Navy. My community college days in Delco. Ooh, it's good stuff there. And I feel like I can feel much more confident in going to Walt Disney Studios, to the departments that own and run the creation and the construct of Star Wars games, because it's their property now, and say, not only did I make this my focus throughout my entire education, but I was working on it beforehand, sculpting it into the perfect series, the story, and into a 6-episode construct. And if we could plan a game to reflect, and it would just be called Star Wars, or would we still have to call it the reboot of some sort? Because it would just present, I wouldn't want to release 6 different games, but if you could write the story of the story we're trying to make for the reboot as a film series into a flowing game, an adventure game that tells this whole story, that would be just as viable, and that would be ammunition in the pouch to say, okay, well, everybody loved these games because they were made to perfection, and not, hey, I'm not going to crap on EA and DICE for Battlefront, but there's a lot of complaints about that game, and for good reason, I should say, as a owner and longtime player of Battlefront and Battlefront 2, then to have Star Wars Battlefront released on this gen with the content it had. Come on, dude. But that's sort of my point, man. That's why I'm getting into it, because I've learned, if nothing else in my life, it's perfectly okay to have complaints, but it's far better to have solutions. Don't, piss and whine about anything that you wouldn't be willing to fix, because when somebody asks you the question, okay, Mr. Cryabetes over here, as I call you, a wambulance, crying about Battlefront, what would you have done better? Okay? With all the money and the manpower behind it, what would you have given me? Right? Most people would say ... What would you respond with to that question, if it's something or of a relative topic that you have been passionate about? Obviously, what we've been talking a lot about here with these podcasts and broadcasts have been Star Wars and the Star Wars reboot. Now, for me, I could have made Battlefront better if DICE had called in Zero Fail Inc. We could have come in and been like, the whole game would be a massive hit if you just poured everything into Galactic Conquest. If you could somehow instancing for multiplayer online, sorry for the pause there, instancing to have players across the galaxy, because you already had a galactic map built from Star Wars Empire at War. If you just made that a PS4 and Xbox One and PC equivalent for a 2016 release, come on, bro. Come on, man. Like, don't give me a couple, just even the old format where it was like a space battle and a land battle and you had the planet. You could generate an infinite number, a never-ending conflict in one of the most epic realms that you could put video games in, with a heritage like the previous Battlefront games, and there's no reason that through a single work day of discussion on what should Battlefront be about, you could incorporate not only space battles reminiscent of Battlefront 2, to the low atmosphere aerial combat that was present in Battlefront 1, and given us a ton of vehicles, man, all user controlled. Like, how could there not be dozens of ATs on the battlefield? Like, the entire cities on all of these scapes and planets that we've become familiar with, there are dozens of cities. Look to the lore, look to the encyclopedias worth of information that have been made to bolster the original concept. And tell me that we couldn't really fight for planets as a faction versus a faction. Now, this is really a plug for the reboot in its own way by being like, the way my story is structured, the only galactic civil war that takes place is between the original Republic, and that evolves from the Republic versus the Separatists, being led by the Dark Jedi Council, to being the Republic versus the Empire, which rises under Emperor Vader. After Anakin Skywalker leaves the Jedi Council and the Republic forever, finding out Luke is the chosen one and not him, being driven by his anger and betrayed for a decade by the Jedi Council, who lied to him and sort of fucked up his entire life to mold him into where he would one day reach the destiny for him most favorable to the Republic, and using his power as a tool to defeat the Dark Jedi. Despite his Anakin's personality, which strove for power, success, victory, glory, and was driven by his huge force power grasp to really supersede all of the other fallen Jedi, who really were just letting him go once he turned to the dark side and do whatever he wanted to, because they knew in the end that they would be under the control of the dark side and they could manipulate the entire galaxy as they saw fit under the reign of Vader. But the prophecy was talking about Luke as the chosen one, so Anakin Skywalker does, during his time with the Republic, marry at Padme Amidala, father Luke and Leia, much earlier in that relationship, so that they are, Luke grows and his force intuition and midichlorian index is in excess of Vader's, or should I say at that point Anakin's. But he does feel that Luke is stronger than him, and at first he wrestles with being proud and jealous because he can't fight his true nature, and he also understands if he's not the chosen one, then he can achieve the destiny he wants. And I mean, that's just a complex for him, really. It sucks being born with such great power and that kind of personality complex that's the position he finds himself in. But that is the melancholy of Lord Vader. Now, the Dark Jedi do see an opportunity in Anakin's jealousy and a weakness that they then drive in. Instead of it being about the health of Padme, they drive it in there and they reveal to him the evidence and the truth of the deception of the Jedi Council, and that Luke is the true chosen one, and that Luke will essentially, now that the Jedi know that it's Luke, they're just trying to find a way to get rid of Anakin because they know he's unstable and he might as well come to the dark side, and it's been his destiny and all that, because if he can defeat or kill really Luke before he can blossom into the true power of the chosen one, then the dark side will rule and he can be the absolute emperor, and history can say whatever he wants it to say. This sways him. He confronts the entirety of the Jedi Council, who, now it's not like Padme is on the platform, and this ain't about her, remember? They're on the home planet of blank, whatever we want it to be, where they're stationed at for this Republic branch and force that Anakin previously controlled alongside Obi-Wan. It should be noted, because Obi-Wan never left his side for the specific purpose of being there to put him down. No matter how strong he got, if he went to the dark side, Obi-Wan's job was to put him out. So Anakin finds out about this. Obi-Wan foresaw it, and he has the whole Jedi Council show up, and it's not some bullshit of the shriveling Emperor where Mace Windu gets thrown out of a window and Anakin laments it. Like, he's there to show up. Qui-Gon Jinn is there, Yoda's there, just the whole squad, and they surround him, and Anakin's like, I can't believe, like, how he's actively like, his power is flaring so greatly that it's just beyond the imagination of the council, and it's what Anakin always wanted, and it physically affects him, and that is what sort of disintegrates his skin. He's wreathed almost in the fiery essence of the Force by his sheer anger and hatred that's come out, and the Jedi rush him and all attack him at once, and he repels them with the Force. And I think he has slain, when he finds out before the Masters get there, including Obi-Wan, I don't know, because I think, like, there should be a squad of Jedi around him, and because the Jedi approach Anakin when he's leading his team of, like, pupils that he keeps. And he finds out from the Jedi Council, who sort of freeze the pupils in place, even though they're conscious to hear it, and they point out to Vader this truth of everything as Obi-Wan's making haste to get there because he hears what's happening over a comlink left on by one of the pupils or something like that. He's alerting the Masters, who are using the utmost Force powers to essentially teleport there in time. And they're pooling their power to be able to do that. And boom, Anakin hears the news. He immediately knows it's true. His lightsaber is drawn through the Force, and just this lightning fast arc that he whips around, these pupils all fall in half. Like he's fucking had it. And his eyes change to that molten, burnt orange color that, you know, we saw a little bit in the originals. He's super pissed. And his hair erodes, his skin starts to erode as the Masters show up, and there Obi-Wan gives him the speech where he says, like, I did. I'm not going to lie to you. Everything is true that they've said. You would be a fool if you didn't understand through everything you've learned in your time with the Republic that we were doing it for the greater good. And Anakin erupts, talking about how you lied and betrayed, and I was supposed to be the greatest. I could have been the master of the galaxy by now if I did it my way, and you lied to me and told me it's, you know, right? I kind of don't want to spoil the whole speech, but you get my drift based on the tone that everybody's in when this happens. When the Jedi Council essentially flee once they've gotten Vader so angry that he threatens to self-destruct and destroy the planet, Obi-Wan stays. And now Vader is talking to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan really is just he's pouring out. And he's saying, you can't imagine that it was easy for me. He's like, you are the Force. Look into me as a being and tell me that I'm lying to you. That it was pain. It was terrible to lie to you because, like, no matter what they say you are, you're still a human. You've still fought alongside me. And I've watched you grow from a teenager to a man, going from one situation to another completely. And I really did. You can't tell me I'm wrong and that I lied to you, because look at what's happened. This is exactly what's happened. The fact that I've saved you from going over the edge so many times in this decade led us to right here, where you've finally gone to the dark side. I feel nothing good in you any longer. And in homage, you were the chosen one. You were supposed to bring balance to the Force, not destroy it, you know? And Anakin doesn't say, I hate you. He just he actually, through that speech, becomes Anakin for the final time for about 30 seconds, and his sheer willpower, everything that's good in him, all the sense of the Force that in him that could still connect to the light side, allows him to become Anakin Skywalker. Now, he's still burnt and disfigured. Like, there's nothing left of him but char. I'm talking like what V really looked like. And that's why he's got to wear this bio suit, this bio armor. But he says to Obi-Wan, this is the final time that Anakin Skywalker will draw breath. I have contained this destructive force with everything that I had that was good in me. If I see Luke or Leia or Padme or you or the Jedi Council or anything of the Republic again, it will just be the physical force of the dark side that will compel their destruction. So get out of here. Get out of here, go and like pray. Oh my God, just this, how about that? You know, this admission that I've given everything that I am to save you guys by buying enough time. I'm not strong enough to destroy myself, but if I could, I would. So tell Padme that I'm sorry for everything. Tell Luke and Leia that I love them, but never... Oh, and like, don't tell Leia, but tell Luke that I am his father. Tell him that I'm his father and that I need him to destroy me and bring balance to the Force and bring the victory of the light side and the Republic over all the chaos that he will try to cause in the future. And Obi-Wan sheathes his lightsaber, like, embraces this charred Anakin, and Anakin uses the last blip of his energy to fuel Obi-Wan and teleporting off the planet, as everything then comes to a set, like the heaving earth, the churning skies, and all this stuff come to a complete halt, come to normality, and he crumples. Obi-Wan teleports out, he crumples. When we see Darth Vader being reconstructed, I don't want it to be what it was in the original movies. I want to show the construction of this extremely durable, obviously futuristic, prosthetic, segmented casing for his body in successive layers of like polymer carbon, stuff like that, to build him outward, and then it's sheathed in this to get that iconic black look, this insulated, fireproof, like black casing, and with this heavy, nearly like bulletproof, laser-proof cloak of black that comes back over it with the life support and super like Jarvis status helmet on the inside, and this breathing mechanism that we're so familiar with the that will never go away. But Darth Vader is now this ice cold embodiment. It reminds us very much of what Anakin Skywalker was like as a child. The last time in his life he was filled with hate and anger and resentment. And he's in this hulking, black armored, mostly bionic construct. And he then takes the fight at the helm of the Empire, which I think he then uses a fuller grasp of the Force, like a nearly complete grasp of the dark side of the Force, to empower every communicative device almost. What I just immediately thought of was Code Geass in R2 when Lelouch addressed the whole world and told them that he conquered the world. That Darth Vader sends out a broadcast that's reached by the entire Republic and the entire Confederacy, which is immediately transferred into the Empire. And he announces, and this would be the end of movie number 2 for me, or, Act 2 of the game, which was the point of when we started this podcast, right? That Darth would then bring the fight seriously to the Republic, and all of this production, his full control, and his word being law, and his immensity as not just a Jedi, but as a genius outside of that, in his intellect, leads him to fully rearray the war effort. And with its increased efficiency, we then see this crazy rise in production, planetary efficiency, the war really turning in favor of the separatists. And he names himself the Emperor, that he knows the truth of the Force, and that he was a Sith and not just a Jedi. And that he embodied the entire, despite all the tens of thousands of Dark Jedi, that, okay, well, they'd been whittled down to thousands of Dark Jedi by this point in the war, to admit, he said factually that he is now the remaining half of the balance of the dark side, and that all who wished to not just submit, but to join the Empire under true strength, and that, like, bringing an end to the war by accepting that he was meant to rule the galaxy and that he was the chosen one, and rattles off briefly of what makes him the chosen one, being that he's the physical embodiment of the dark side of the Force, and that this time was decided for the universe to change from the constructive essence of the Republic to the control of the Empire. So, I mean, I feel like that's pretty cool. Excuse me for my congestion. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that's definitely a fresh take on the story, and would be very pleasing to any audience anywhere if they're part of the fan base or not. I'll give you an epic show, and afterwards you can say you don't like Star Wars, and I mean, maybe if I'm right there and you say that, I'll ask you why. But if not, it's like, sorry man, I tried to make a movie with lots of action, the newest, most well-rounded construct built off one of the most perfect foundations when it comes to creative development. And that's my truth, man. That's what I'm going for. And every time I start a podcast lately and I want to think about it or talk about it that way, I often try to go into, if I'm casting a certain character, I will speak with an individual and I'll tell them this, essentially what I just said to you in the podcast, because that was freestyle. Like, we just start talking around here and see how that turns out. Don't do any editing. So you get me raw, if that's what you were hoping for. I don't know why you would, but so, yep. Obi-Wan Kenobi, as you can see, he's one of my favorite characters, and the fact that he is one of the main players throughout the course of the story, and also one of the richest backgrounds that we have on people, because if you just watch these 6 movies, do you know a lot about Yoda? Do you know where Yoda came from? Do you know what race Yoda is? I mean, if you do research, that's cool, but I'm asking if you just watch the movies. Like, I mean, me, until a few years ago, say that when I wanted to do my own stuff involving Star Wars, I started doing research. But if not, you don't know shit about Yoda. You know, he's a mysterious old master. He's a Miyagi out in the space jungles. And he, runs into Luke when Luke just happens to be in need of Jedi training. He's the last Jedi, now that Ben Kenobi is dead. But getting back to old Ben Kenobi in the context of Luke Skywalker, if Obi-Wan Kenobi then became Luke's primary trainer, oh shiz, think about this, dude. If Yoda is killed during the fight between new Vader, Phoenix Vader, right, and all of the Jedi Council. If he, Mace Windu, and Qui-Gon Jinn are all killed, and then Obi-Wan saves the day, then Obi-Wan is the only one left to train Luke Skywalker. And the astral projections of the Jedi that can walk on the living plane, they're often blotted out because Vader specifically uses a radiant force jam, I would think, at all times when he meditates, when he's in his sphere, right? It takes off his armor pieces and allows him direct contact with the atmosphere around him, and he can connect almost like a cerebro in his head, force cerebro, right? In which he sort of overruns those signatures because he's stronger than all of them, and the only person that can connect with them is Luke. But Obi-Wan has done training, moving across the entire galaxy piece by piece until he's an old man, and Luke is like, what, in his 20s? I think he'll start his journey. No, man, no way, not 20 years of war. He's 10 when Vader goes Vader. And he'll be, he'll be like 18 or 19, and him and Leia will be Republican, like, freelance fighters. No, that's dumb. So let's say Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of the few people whose force manipulation can overshadow Anakin's, but it's only because of force techniques that Obi-Wan was powerful enough to use on Anakin when Anakin first came under his charge at 17, when he was still emotionally and hormonally imbalanced and incomplete. Obi-Wan used those to make an anti-zone in Anakin's mind forever. And even with the full Vader that wasn't overrun. So Obi-Wan Kenobi takes Luke and Leia, and they travel the galaxy. Now, Leia's obviously not the chosen one, but she's Leia, man. She's the personality who I don't even want to change. But mirroring her mother, who goes with them, he takes the family and he travels across all of the Republic space that does become more of a resistance because of the power of the Empire, but even 7 years later, it's still nearly... Okay, now we're down from about just under half the galaxy being under Republic control at the end of... No, not at the end of the Civil War, but at the transition point into the Empire versus the Republic. Now, when Luke is an adult and the third movie starts with Luke being an adult, and I want to cover that in flashbacks to be their travels all across the world. Damn, man. Skittering stuff out here in the dead of night, and of course cats climbing trees for whatever reason. Pardon me. That did spook me a little bit, but okay, there you go. We're under a minute, and I want to actually not have a 5-second intro for once, or outro for once. But you get my drift here. We're talking the story, and we're talking in it in the context of a game now, because I'm going to Full Sail, like I said in the beginning, and I want to make this reboot airtight and ironclad by the time I'm getting my bachelor's, so I can walk right into Disney's door 2.5 years from now, nearly 3 years from now, and say, here is this game in its entirety. There's no way you can shoot it down. It's perfect. That's my goal, and I want you to be with me on that whole trip, keeping me honest, keeping me on task and feeding me your ideas so we as a fan base can craft the new awesome shit that's for the next generation.